The year was 1965. U.S. Congress passes the Voting Rights Act. That's the landmark legislation that paved the way for minority voters to take part in the most fundamental right of citizenship, voting. But today, as we mark Black History Month, it's clear many Americans are still fighting for their vote. And Georgia is a battleground. Black voters in Georgia were a major force in recent elections that helped swing the White House and the Democratic takeover of the Senate.
People came out in droves to vote. People stood in line to 8 to 10 hours.
Anna Dennis is the executive director of Common Cause Georgia, a boots-on-the-ground, get-out-the-vote organization advocating for equitable access to the polls.
I take my daughter, she's a toddler, but I take her to the polls with me, and she does a little line warming herself where she hands out chips and drinks, and I got her to be able to say the word vote.
You voted in record numbers in November.
Enthusiasm, she says, turned Georgia blue.
Then we had a backlash of that enthusiasm.
State Republicans introduced a new election law that, among other things, limits mail voting, reins in the use of drop boxes, and outlaws mobile voting sites, and even giving water to voters waiting in line.
Things that my daughter literally enjoys doing when we go to the precincts, that's not allowed any longer.
According to the Brennan Center for Justice, at least 19 states have passed dozens of laws that make voting harder. Now, Republicans clinging to claims that the 2020 presidential election was rigged say it's needed to prevent voter fraud. Activists contend the laws were designed to dilute the voting strength of Black Americans. The push for voting rights has become more urgent as midterm season approaches.
We must step in and act. We must do everything.
But in the last year, Democrats in Washington have failed to advance federal voting rights legislation, with many hurdles left to overcome before this fall's midterms. The weight of this moment is not lost on Dennis and other advocates.
We're on the heels of another historic election. And I always tell people, if it can happen in Georgia, it can happen anywhere in this country.
Caryn Ceolin, City News.